Hi everyone, and welcome to a WARNO video that is today about the basics. The basic skills and tips you need to succeed in the game, to be more efficient in the game. It is not designed for those of you who have maybe played a lot of Wargame, because you're going to know a lot of this already. It's designed for those people who have maybe had a long break from these games and don't remember a lot about them. Or it's for those people who have picked up WARNO having never played any of the Eugen games before. The first thing we're going to look at today is the deck screen, and I just want to give a basic overview. I'm not going to build a deck. This is my US infantry deck. It is a few patches old now. It's from the Nay patch, or the milestone that came out, so it needs a few adjustments, but I just want to show you a few things in here. So first, looking at the deck screen, the main thing I want to point out here is at the right hand side you've got this huge unit card. It gives you all the stats of the unit, all the stats of the different weapons, its armor, etc, etc. Now the unit quality, it's a guide but not a great one. Don't necessarily believe that. Certainly if you're a brand new player and you just want to get the gist of a deck, start by going for things like that, the ones that are good units, but bear in mind that that's not always telling you the whole truth. As you get more into the game, you will learn what all of these statistics mean. I'm not going to cover them in this video because it would take too long, but you'll gradually learn that things might also not be quite correct here. These stats give you certain percentages and numbers that don't seem to completely relate to what happens in game, and I think that's because they're still tying down all of the calculations. So I expect them to continue to be adjusted as they develop the game. They have a relevance, but you know, if something says it's 105% accuracy, it might not really be 105% accuracy, because you can't really have more than 100%. So just bear that sort of thing in mind. Now the next thing I want to mention is availability. When you start a new deck, you won't have any units selected, so I will get rid of all of these units. This is just a Recon tab. Now, Recon is really important in the game, and we will get to that a little bit later in the video, but right now I just want to show you how this is put together. So, in your deck you have activation points. This is this little section here. Each deck is allowed 50 activation points, or your battle group I should say. I'm still going to call it a deck because that's what I'm used to. But basically you're allowed 50 activation points in total, and that's from logistics, infantry, artillery, tanks, recon, anti-air, helicopters and air tabs. So that's all of those added together can add up to 50, which means that you have to choose where you want to spend your points. Anything that costs one activation point is great, and you might as well fill that slot because it's really cheap. 2 activation points, probably the same. Once you start getting on to the 3, that's when you have to start putting question marks on whether you want to spend that many points in that particular area of your deck. The next thing to mention is the unit cards themselves. So down here you have the unit cards, what is available to you. In the bottom corner you have the number of calls. This indicates how many of that card are available to you. Please ignore the tooltip here. A lot of it is copied and pasted from Steel Division 2, which isn't actually relevant, and they're still updating all of that. So those numbers relate to the number of cards you can call in. If you then add that card, you can either double click on it or click the plus. You can see that that has 6 availability in the game. So that one card that you have used from down here means you have 6 of those units available in the game. Now that availability will change depending on the veterancy of the unit. Veterancy is selected here. You can have experience poor, which reduces your chance to hit, your rate of fire and your stress resistance, as you can see there. Then you can have trained, which is the normal and everything is just as standard. Then you have experience veteran, which increases your chance to hit, rate of fire and stress resistance. And then you have elite, which does the same again. Now the important thing to note here is that not every unit will have the option to change its veterancy, and some of them will be more limited than this. For example, you can't choose experience poor, but you can select any of the other 3 there. But if we say switch to the LRS and add that, you can see that it comes with only the veterancy veteran or veterancy elite. You cannot choose a different experience for that. and that obviously varies throughout the units in the deck. The other thing to note here is with any infantry you have the option of bringing them in a particular vehicle. Your choice of vehicle matters for two reasons. Firstly, if it is an unarmed vehicle, when you bring the unit in and unload it from that vehicle, you can sell that vehicle in the game and get those points back. If, however, you select the scouts with the dragon, you can see that this, when I click on it, has two sets of weapons. Because this has weapons, you cannot sell it. You have to utilize it in the game. So there is a reason for choosing particular transport vehicles. Some of them will be more useful than others to you, and some of them will be useful in different situations. But that's something for another video to go into more detail, but you get the gist. Have a think about what you need to support your forces and what will be useful to you if you're going to spend the extra points on bringing a vehicle in that has weapons on it. Now, the last thing I want to mention, if we go to the logistics tab or the infantry tab or indeed the tank tab, are command vehicles. So you have your supply, that's very important as well. Supply is to rearm and resupply your forces, including repairing vehicles and replenishing infantry squads. But even more important than that are command vehicles. This is any vehicle, any infantry or any tank, or even any helicopter as down at the bottom here, with this little star symbol. These are commanders. They are what allow you to capture points within the game, and points mean prizes. If you don't capture the points, you don't win the game. If you don't neutralize the points by having a commander in there when they do, you don't win the game. The idea is you're trying to get as many points as possible, and certainly more than the enemy. Even if there's a time limit on the game, you want to have more points, and command vehicles are what get those points. Now, bringing in a single command vehicle is a bad idea because they will be a prime target for the enemy, to artillery, to bomb with a plane, to even send in squads of infantry to destroy them specifically, because they want to win the game too. So it's always worth having several options for command vehicles. For example, in this deck I have the Mutt CP. This is just a little vehicle, and you get 4 of those available to you. You could actually take elite of this, but I see absolutely no point in that. It's just a command vehicle. You just want to sit it in a tree line somewhere it's going to be hidden, and hope it doesn't get artilleried. Then you've got your infantry, which is another option for commanders. You see here I have the mech rifles LDR. These guys are great for sticking in, again, forests, but they can also be placed in buildings, so they're great to be placed in points with towns in them. The final option is the tank command vehicle. For example here, the M1 Abrams CP. These are great to be nearer the front line because they obviously have armor, and this means that they can take a little bit of punishment, and this also applies to the tank divisions in particular because they have even better command tanks with better armor ratings. These are the type of units you want at the front line. Now, while they also give you points by capturing the sections of the map, you also need to know that these have the ability to rank up your units that are within a range around them. So anything that gets within that range will be boosted to the next veterancy level. So all of your veterancy level, your experience level veteran, will be boosted to elite. Anything that is just trained will be boosted to veteran. Anything that is poor will be boosted to trained. These are all great advantages, especially for things like tanks, which will increase their accuracy, increase their rate of fire, and make a huge difference in a tank v tank battle. So being able to have some command tanks near the front lines is a great thing, but you must protect them. They are worth a lot of points, and bringing in more is going to cost you, and also you don't get many of them. As you can see here, you only get 2 when you bring it in as trained. If I was to bring that in as veteran, I'd only get 1. Reality is, in my opinion, you can bring them in trained in this case because they're still going to apply the same buff to the units around them, and you don't really want to use it for fighting if you can help it. You want to sort of keep it just behind the front lines, and it's just there to take a little bit of fire if it has to be while it's retreating. So that's the basics of the deck stuff I wanted to talk about today. It's not really going into any great detail, I accept. I have deck videos for that, but this was just to demonstrate the basics of what's important. So, command vehicles, supply, recon, and then a mixture of other units. Recon is really important, and I'm going to show you why later in this video. Now we're going to step into the game and take a look at some of the features on the actual game map. Welcome to the in-game map. Now, the first thing I want to touch on is deployment and the deployment phase. There are some little bits and pieces that you can pick up here if you've never played the game before. So, the first thing to mention is you can bring in any units you want here, but recon units specifically can be placed further forward. So if you click on, for example, the BRM-1 here that I have, which is a recon vehicle, it can be placed anywhere within that bigger red circle with the dotted line. Now this map is shrunk down because it is the special training map for 1 vs 1 that I would encourage people to play against the AI or against each other if you're just starting out with a friend. Now this means that you can put your recon on the road right up here. You could even put it in the bushes, you can put it anywhere. They've actually just also patched the game so that you can put recon infantry and vehicles on these lines too. So for example, I could stick them on this road over here. Now the reason for using roads is vehicles move faster down roads than they do over the ground. So that's something to bear in mind. The other option of course is this, which is bringing in infantry in a chopper. Now these ones you can put pretty much anywhere. Now in Wargame, many of you will remember that you could place down choppers above trees so that they started in the air. As you'll notice, my cursor is hovering over the trees, but the chopper is appearing next to the trees. That is because in WARNO, that is not an option. You cannot place your choppers to come in or spawn above the ground, basically. They have to take off. But it does mean you can still get forward pretty fast because it's a chopper, so we'll stick one there and we'll try and get those into this middle point here, center specifically. Now, the other things you want are command vehicles. Now, there was a big change in the recent patch in that you no longer have to have a command vehicle in Anna. Anna will stay as your point the entire game, and you can bring in land and air units through it regardless of whether you have any units there yourself. Is it worth putting a couple of units there to defend? Potentially, to stop the enemy coming around the sides, around the back, and blocking off your spawn-in point with lots of missile units or something. However, what you can do is now put down all your other stuff. So we would want a command vehicle, or namely 2 command vehicles or command infantry, to take first this point and then this point as well. I would get some infantry for this one. So if I go to the infantry tab and I find my Motorstrike commander there, and I can't put them within that extended circle, they have to be within the original spawn square. So I will put them on the road here. I can then choose perhaps a command tank that's going to come up to this front point because it's in the most danger. So I can stick that here as well. We've got a couple of units down there. It's not an entire force, but it gets my point across. Now what you can do is give them commands. Now this is something that Wargame Red Dragon didn't have, but you can give advanced commands. So if I click on this unit, you will notice that I have my orders down here and also smart orders options. So for example, I can do move fast with that BRM-1 to get it up to the middle here. Now, both its guns are enabled, so it's worth noting that and keeping it in mind, as you may wish to turn off the weapons as soon as the game starts. You cannot do that at this stage. That also applies to anti-air, which we'll get to in a little while. We can obviously move this one fast as well, but it's a chopper, so we don't have that command. We just tell it to go up to the front. And then these guys here as well, we can move them fast up to here. Now when it comes to commanders, we can have them move fast to here. And we can also give units multiple commands. I can have selected move fast. I can then hold shift which you'll notice makes all the other lines disappear because I've still got this one selected, and then I can click unload. And you'll notice that a little circle has appeared there. So my command vehicle, or my vehicle with a commander in it, will go to this point, unload the commander, and then wait for further orders. We now select our command tank, and we can move it fast and sit it in these trees back here perhaps, just so it's out of the way. We can grab our other tank, and we can move it fast and pop it to there, and that will just provide some cover. And then we can do our Strela and move it the same, and we want that perhaps over here in the bushes so it has a better line of sight. You have to be careful though, because if the enemy see it, they will be able to shoot it between those tree lines. Now if I click launch battle, you'll see that they will enact those tasks. Now while we wait for our units to arrive at their locations, I'm just going to click the BRM1. Now one thing I haven't shown you yet is the ability to have line of sight for the unit enabled. This is something which came in Steel Division 2, and they will be very used to it, and this is a slightly more advanced version of that. So this is the line of sight tool. It shows you the maximum line of sight for your units. It shows you your medium machine gun range and your tank gun range, so the range of all the weapons, and each unit will display that when you click on it. Air-to-ground rockets, for example. Now, the other thing that you will notice here is that you can display enemy stealth. So in open ground, you can see to there badly, mediocre to there, good, exceptional. Then what you can do is select all of the in the forest circles. Now please bear in mind that this applies to what is within the line of sight range, so mainly at the edge of forests, not deep in forests, as you can see from the line of sight tool here. So the BRM1 has exceptional vision, or exceptional optics. So that means that stealth bad, so it would see them in the forest there. If the stealth is mediocre, it would see them within the yellow circle. If their stealth is good, it would see them within the green circle. And if their stealth is exceptional, it would see them within the blue circle. Now if I unload these guys and these guys, we'll see that they're slightly different. So we have the Radvedska, who have very good optics, and we have the Radvedska Heavy, who have just good optics. So there will be a difference between what these two can see. You notice their circles are bigger for the normal Radvedska, which have very good optics, compared to the Radvedska Heavy, which have good optics and their circles are much smaller. That is the distance they need to be to see enemy units. So bear in mind that enemy units with very good or exceptional optics will be seeing these Radvedska before the Radvedska see them. Recon is so important to see what the enemy are doing, and equally to Recon, stealth is also important. As you'll notice, my units are flashing, except the Mi-8T. That is because all of these units are hidden in forests or tree lines, or, in the case of the Radvedska Heavy, a building. Infantry in buildings are hidden, so you can see the same here. The Motorstrelki Commander is hidden. The BMP-3, however, is not, and I'm just going to turn off the line of sight tool. If I were to move that into the trees here, you will note that my cursor actually changes. It's gone yellow. That means that I'm moving it into cover. You'll notice here on the roads and things, it is just grey. But anywhere where there is cover or big tree lines, you'll notice it changes to yellow. It doesn't seem to apply for these little tree lines here unless you catch it just right, but those are also stealthed areas. As you can see, our BMP-3 is now stealthed. Now, an Mi-8 cannot be stealthed, but we can sure as heck move it out the way of the front lines. Okay, I've jumped ahead slightly because I want to show you a little bit of the reasoning for stealth, stats, and optics being important. These Radvedska have very good optics and exceptional stealth. So they can see any exceptional stealth units to the blue, good to the green, and mediocre to the yellow. If I click on the BRM1, you will note that the Radvedska have it between the yellow and green. The BRM1 has a stealth of only mediocre. That means that if those were enemy Radvedska, they could see this BRM1, and therefore my enemy's units would be able to open fire on it. But at the same time, the BRM1 cannot see the Radvedska, because the Radvedska have exceptional stealth and are in a forest or tree line. Therefore, it can't see them. They are just out of that circle. If they were at the edge of this tree line, then obviously they would be visible, and the BRM1 could indeed engage them if its weapons were enabled. But because they're just outside, it means the Radvedska can see it, but it can't see the Radvedska. So just bear that in mind when you're moving units around. It's possible that the enemy can see you when you can't see them, depending on those stealth and optics ratings. So I've brought in some artillery pieces. Some artillery pieces have the option of smoke as well as their normal high explosives or cluster munitions. So the option for smoke is what I've dropped here. That is with the smoke button here, or you can use the shortcut B on your keyboard, and I can put some smoke down in front of this forest, for example. Now, the advantage to smoke is that if I click on this BRM1, do you notice that previously it could see all the way up here without an issue, because there was nothing blocking its line of sight. However, now the smoke blocks its line of sight, and as the smoke clears, do you see that slowly but surely it regains that visibility? Whereas here, it's now losing visibility because I'm putting down more smoke. Now, the advantage to smoke is not just that it blocks enemy line of sight for their recon, it also blocks line of sight for their other units. So, for example, if I wanted to do an attack move to attack that forest, I can select those to attack, I can select my artillery, which I have on the hotkey 1, to hotkey any units, drag a box around them, or select them all, and click Control 2 in this case, and now I have all of these motorstrelky in BMPs on Control 2. And I'm attacking this point. If there are any enemy units there, they cannot see me coming. And now I'm smoking this area to stop them moving down here to see me coming that way. They could push out, but I'd be able to fire at them as they came out of the smoke. Equally, they're going to fire at me as I go through the smoke. So what I would do as I get here is click Unload, get all the infantry out, and move everyone in together. The infantry and the motorstrelky. The motorstrelky and the BMP3s all moving in together to attack this point. Bearing in mind that obviously the BMP3s move faster than the infantry will. So it's just something to bear in mind when you're doing attacking maneuvers, as they will need their infantry support. The other thing to mention about artillery, which is new to WARNO, which was not available in Wargame, are smart orders. Defensive fire, you select an area which it will defend for you. Fire at will just fire at anything it sees, and counter battery will specifically target enemy artillery fire. This obviously just takes a little bit of effort away on your part, rather than you have to worry about it all the time. One last thing I want to mention about artillery is how it fires right now. Now, this is something I expect to change in the game within the next couple of months, but at the moment, all artillery, be it rocket artillery, MRLS in other words, or normal artillery like this, all fire from left to right, or if you're the other team, right to left. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about positioning units that are coming under fire. If you've got units coming under fire at this side of that circle, don't move them to that side, move them that way. Move them away from where the incoming fire is. So if I was on the other side, I know that the artillery fire will start here and push across to that side of the circle. So the ideal situation is if I get shots here, I move my units out of the circle that way. And therefore they won't be getting hit by the creeping barrage that is moving across my screen. Now obviously this circle's rather small for this artillery compared to some of the bigger pieces of artillery and the MRLS artillery, which will have a wider dispersion circle. Now the last thing I want to have a quick chat about in this video, because otherwise it's going to go on and on forever, is anti-air units, specifically the vehicles rather than the infantry. They all have different weapon systems, they all have different capabilities. The Strela, for example, here has a fire and forget missile, which is designated by this symbol here, and its range is reasonably good against helicopters, not so good against aircraft. There are other weapon systems, such as the OSA, which also has a missile, but this is a semi-active radar missile. You'll notice that it has a better range against helicopters, but a significantly improved range against aircraft, as in fighter jets, as in bombers, things like that. Now that comes at a cost. The cost is this unit is radar. It uses radar guidance to track its target. Because of that, it is susceptible to what we call a seed plane. These are planes which have missiles that lock onto enemy radar systems and destroy them. So if this weapon system is turned on, which you can see down at the bottom here, weapon on, that means that it is targetable by a seed plane, and a seed plane might not have to get as close as 4,200 meters. Some of them have longer ranges than that in Wargame, and the same will likely apply in WARNO. The solution to that is to turn off the weapon. The other option for that is the H button on your keyboard, which will turn it on and off. You would leave it turned off until the enemy are flying over the unit or within its range, and then turn it on and risk taking a shot at that point. Bear in mind that if it is on, you see a seed plane, the seed plane launches its missile and you turn it off, it doesn't matter, that seed plane missile will still hit that unit. It is already locked on. The same applies to the Biryusa, which is a cannon or a SPAG based anti-air system. This fires lots and lots of cannon shells at enemy aircraft that go over. To do this, it utilizes a radar system. You will notice its ranges aren't as good as the OSA, but they are currently very effective at targeting and taking out aircraft in the game. Again, this is going to be changed in one of the future patches. Please note this video is made in patch 6, therefore there will likely be changes. But again, you can turn off its weapon system. The main thing is, don't cluster your anti-air together. Spread them out. Make sure you have good coverage and that they can't all be killed by one artillery strike. Now, as much as I could go on and on talking about different aspects of the game, I'm going to leave that video there because it's getting quite long as it is. These are just some basics to help you understand how to play the game and some of the important aspects such as stealth, recon, your deck building, your initial deployment of troops, and managing a couple of your units like anti-air. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. I really hope this was helpful. I will do more tutorial videos and guides for WARNO as things progress. I'm just keeping it to a limited amount because of how much they're changing the fundamentals of the game, because anything I've said in this video could dramatically change before the game is released. I imagine that certain things like the deck screen is going to stay pretty similar now, and stealth and recon should stay pretty much the same. But other things are likely to possibly change, such as how the artillery fires and how the anti-aircraft weapon systems behave. But I will certainly cover that as and when it happens. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for some more WARNO.